The date was May 23, 1977. It was a day that began like any other, but would soon descend into chaos and fear. The early morning calm of the Dutch countryside was shattered by an event that would sear itself into the nation's memory. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden hue over the fields and villages, when the tranquility was abruptly broken. A train, traveling from Groningen to Amsterdam, jolted to a halt near the village of Punt. The screeching of the brakes echoed through the serene landscape, signaling the start of a nightmare. Armed men, their faces hidden behind balaclavas, stormed the carriages. They moved with precision and purpose, their presence immediately instilling fear among the passengers. Passengers, caught completely off guard, were thrust into a terrifying ordeal. The confusion and panic were palpable as they tried to comprehend the sudden turn of events. This was no ordinary robbery. The atmosphere inside the train was thick with tension and uncertainty. This was a full-scale train hijacking, orchestrated by a group of desperate and determined South Moluccan youths. They were young, but their resolve was unshakable. Fear gripped the hostages as the hijackers, their voices tense with emotion, made their demands clear. The hostages could see the intensity in their eyes, a reflection of the deep-seated grievances that had driven them to such drastic measures. They were fighting for the freedom of their people, a people they believed had been unjustly denied their birthright. The hijackers saw themselves as freedom fighters, not criminals. Their fight was not with the terrified passengers. The hostages were merely pawns in a larger struggle. It was with the Dutch government, a government they accused of betrayal and oppression. The hijackers' demands were a cry for justice, a plea for recognition and respect. The hijacking, broadcast live on television screens across the Netherlands, became a potent symbol of the unresolved tensions simmering beneath the surface of Dutch society. The entire nation watched in horror and fascination as the drama unfolded. It forced the nation to confront its colonial past and the plight of the Moluccan community within its borders. The hijacking was a stark reminder of the lingering wounds of history. The stage was set for a tense standoff, a battle of wills between a group of desperate, disenfranchised youths and a government grappling with a crisis that threatened to tear its social fabric apart. The world watched, waiting to see how this confrontation would end and what it would mean for the future of the Netherlands. To understand the hijacking at Punt, we must first journey back in time to the Spice Islands of Indonesia, to the Maluku Islands, once known as the Spice Islands. For centuries, these islands were coveted for their wealth of nutmeg, cloves, and mace, which were highly valuable. The Dutch East India Company, hungry for profit, established a brutal colonial regime in the region, exploiting its resources and subjugating its people. The Moluccan people, known for their fierce independence and seafaring traditions, resisted Dutch rule. Uprisings were met with brutal reprisals from the Dutch. The Dutch, determined to maintain their grip on the lucrative spice trade, employed ruthless tactics to suppress dissent. Fast forward to the aftermath of World War II. Indonesia, after years of struggle, finally achieved independence from the Dutch. However, for the Moluccans, who had fought alongside the Dutch during the war, independence came at a heavy price. Betrayal and abandonment would become recurring themes in their story, shaping their future. Among those who felt the sting of betrayal most acutely were the families of Max Papalaya and Hansina Uktolseya. These families, like many others, had placed their trust in promises that were never meant to be kept, and the weight of this betrayal would shape their lives in profound ways. Papalaya, born in the Moluccan Islands in 1954, was the son of a Canny L soldier, a member of the Royal Netherlands East Indies Army. His father, like many Moluccan men, had served with the hope that their loyalty would be rewarded with a secure future for their families. He grew up steeped in the stories of his father's service, stories that instilled in him a deep sense of loyalty to the Netherlands, the country his father had fought for. These tales were not just about battles and bravery, but also about the camaraderie and the shared dreams of a better life that seemed just within reach. Hansina Uktolseya, born in a refugee camp in the Netherlands in 1957, carried the weight of her family's displacement and the stories of the homeland they had been forced to flee. Her parents often spoke of the lush landscapes and the vibrant culture they left behind, painting a picture of a paradise lost. Their lives, though separated by thousands of miles, were intertwined by the shared experience of being Moluccan, in a country that seemed to have turned its back on them. The Moluccan community in the Netherlands struggled to maintain their cultural identity while grappling with the harsh realities of their new environment. The Dutch government, after promising the Moluccan soldiers a return to an independent homeland, reneged on their promise, fearing Indonesian reprisals. This political maneuvering left the Moluccans in a state of limbo, their hopes for a sovereign nation dashed by the very people they had served. The Moluccans, instead of being hailed as heroes, found themselves relegated to the margins of Dutch society, their dreams of self-determination dashed. They organized protests and voiced their grievances, but their cries for justice were often met with indifference or outright hostility. The sense of betrayal ran deep, affecting not just the generation that had fought, but also their children, who inherited a legacy of broken promises and unfulfilled dreams. The hijacking of the train at Punt was not a spontaneous act of violence. It was a meticulously planned operation, born out of a deep sense of frustration and desperation. It was the culmination of years of simmering resentment, a desperate attempt to force the Dutch government to acknowledge the plight of the Moluccan people. The Moluccans had long felt betrayed and abandoned, their cries for justice falling on deaf ears. Papalaya, Uktulseya, and their fellow hijackers, armed with rifles and explosives, were determined to make their voices heard, whatever the cost. They meticulously prepared for the hijacking, knowing that their actions would draw international attention. The hijackers, dressed in military fatigues, moved through the carriages with an air of urgency and determination. Each step they took was calculated, each movement deliberate, as they sought to control the situation and make their demands known. Fear hung heavy in the air as they separated the passengers, herding them into different compartments. The hostages, gripped by terror, could only hope for a peaceful resolution, their lives hanging in the balance. Outside, the news of the hijacking spread like wildfire, transforming the quiet Dutch countryside into a scene of chaos and confusion. Emergency responders and police quickly gathered at the scene, trying to assess the situation and formulate a response. The eyes of the world turned to Punt. International news outlets covered the event extensively, and people around the globe watched in shock and anticipation, waiting to see how the crisis would unfold. The hijackers, thrust onto the global stage, became unlikely symbols of a struggle for recognition and justice. Their demands were clear. They wanted the Dutch government to address the historical injustices faced by the Moluccan people. Their actions, though extreme, resonated with many within the Moluccan community, a community tired of being ignored and marginalized. The hijacking was a desperate cry for help, a plea for the world to finally listen to their story and understand their pain. The hijackers' demands were clear and non-negotiable: the release of imprisoned Moluccan activists and recognition of the Republic of South Maluku, and international attention to their struggle for self-determination. They were fighting for more than just the release of a few prisoners. They were fighting for the soul of a people denied a homeland and a voice in their own destiny. The Dutch government, caught off guard by the audacity of the hijacking, initially responded with a mixture of confusion and indecision. Public opinion was divided. Some sympathized with the plight of the Moluccans, while others condemned the hijacking as an act of terrorism. As days turned into nights, the tension at Punt escalated. Negotiations between the hijackers and the authorities proved fruitless. The hijackers, distrustful of the Dutch government, refused to budge from their demands. The hostages, caught in the middle of a political standoff, clung to hope, praying for a peaceful resolution to this crisis. Gap 3S. The hijacking at Punt ultimately ended in a tragic confrontation. The Dutch military stormed the train, resulting in the deaths of 2 hostages and 6 hijackers. The aftermath of this violent resolution left an indelible mark on all involved. The surviving hijackers were swiftly apprehended and faced legal proceedings that would determine their fate. In court, the complexities of their motives were laid bare. Desperation, a sense of betrayal, and a longing for justice were themes that echoed through the testimonies. The legal outcome was severe, with lengthy prison sentences handed down to those who had survived. For the families of the hijackers, the trial was a harrowing ordeal. They had lost loved ones and now faced a future shadowed by grief and stigma. The families of the hostages too were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives, forever haunted by the trauma of those days on the train. The wider Moluccan community in the Netherlands felt the repercussions deeply. The hijacking brought their struggle to international attention, but at a profound cost. It forced a reckoning with their identity and their place in Dutch society. In the years that followed, efforts to heal and reconcile took many forms. Memorials were erected, dialogues initiated, and slowly a sense of understanding began to emerge. But the scars of that desperate plea for freedom remain, a poignant reminder of the lengths to which people will go when their voices are silenced and their dreams denied. Gap 3S. Gap 3S. The Punt hijacking resonated far beyond the borders of the Netherlands, drawing international attention and eliciting a range of responses from governments and media around the world. Countries with significant diasporas, particularly those with colonial histories, watched closely as the events unfolded. The global community condemned the violence, but also acknowledged the deep-seated grievances that had driven the hijackers to such desperate measures. Gap 3S. In the wake of the tragedy, there was an urgent call for enhanced security measures on public transportation. Railway systems across Europe and beyond began to reassess their protocols, striving to prevent such incidents in the future. Increased surveillance, stricter passenger screenings, and the presence of armed security personnel became more common. These changes were met with mixed reactions. While some praised the heightened security as a necessary precaution, others criticized the measures as invasive and a threat to civil liberties. Gap 3S. The Punt hijacking also prompted a broader discussion about the roots of political violence and the importance of addressing underlying social and political issues. International organizations and human rights groups emphasized the need for dialogue and reconciliation over militaristic responses. They argued that understanding and addressing the causes of such acts was crucial to preventing them. Gap 3S. As the world moved forward, the lessons from Punt remained a sobering reminder of the complexities of freedom, justice, and security. The international response underscored the interconnectedness of nations and the shared responsibility to foster peace and understanding. The changes in railway security protocols were a testament to the impact of the hijacking, ensuring that the events at Punt would not be forgotten but rather serve as a catalyst for a safer, more vigilant world. Gap 3S. Gap 3S. The Punt hijacking left an indelible mark on global train security policies, ushering in a new era of vigilance and precaution. In the immediate aftermath, countries worldwide scrambled to reassess and bolster their railway security frameworks, aiming to prevent such a tragedy from ever repeating. Gap 3S. One of the most significant changes was the implementation of advanced surveillance technologies. High-definition cameras, facial recognition systems, and real-time monitoring became standard features in major train stations. These technologies not only acted as deterrents, but also provided authorities with crucial tools for rapid response in case of emergencies. Gap 3S. Passenger screening protocols saw a dramatic overhaul. Similar to airport security, train stations began incorporating metal detectors, baggage scanners, and random security checks. While these measures initially faced resistance due to concerns over privacy and convenience, they gradually became accepted as part of the new normal in public transportation. Gap 3S. The presence of armed security personnel became more common, particularly on high-risk routes and during peak travel times. Specially trained response teams were established to handle potential threats swiftly and efficiently. This visible security presence provided a sense of reassurance to passengers, though it also sparked debates about the militarization of public spaces. Gap 3S. International cooperation played a crucial role in enhancing train security. Countries shared intelligence, best practices, and technological innovations, fostering a collaborative approach to counter-terrorism. Joint training exercises and simulations helped prepare security forces for a range of potential scenarios, ensuring a coordinated and effective response to any threats. Gap 3S. These changes, while significant, were not without challenges. Balancing security with civil liberties and passenger convenience remained a delicate task. However, the legacy of Punt served as a constant reminder of the stakes involved and the necessity of vigilance. Gap 3S. In the years that followed, the improvements in train security measures contributed to a decline in hijackings and terrorist incidents on railways. The lessons learned from Punt reverberated through the corridors of power, shaping policies and practices that prioritize safety without compromising the values of freedom and privacy. Gap 3S. The impact of the Punt hijacking on global train security was profound and enduring. It highlighted the importance of preparedness, the value of technology, and the power of international collaboration. Above all, it underscored the need for a balanced approach that safeguards both security and the principles of an open society. As the world continued to evolve, the legacy of Punt remained a testament to the resilience and adaptability of global security efforts, ensuring that the wheels of progress continued to turn safely and securely. Gap 3S.